Freight Efficiency with NACFI's Mike Roth and Friends.
Here in episode 80, we're joined by Ali Javidan, founder and CEO of Range Energy, where he talks about electrified, powered trailers, how a Venn diagram led him to trucking, the role of empathy in product development, and the importance of factoring in drivers when developing a new technology. He also explains how he is applying lessons learned during his career in racing and at Tesla and Google, as well as the need to lead with humility when developing a new technology. Today we have joining us Ali Javidan. He's the founder and CEO of Range Energy. Maybe you haven't heard of Range Energy, but listening to this, you'll know what it's all about here soon. I'm really excited to have you on, Ali. It's been great getting to know you and appreciate you being on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here. Thanks so much for having me. Finally, after all these episodes of listening, I get to be on it. It's cool.
So you are a listener.
Absolutely.
Cool. So this is entitled Freight Efficiency with NACFI's Mike Roth and Friends. So Ali, do you know how we were introduced, or how we first got started to become friends? You remember, Ali?
Yeah, totally. I think we really kind of officially became friends during Manifest this year in 2022. But we were first introduced back in November by Dave Lyons. Dave is an advisor to us and a friend of mine. And he's got some experience in this industry, and he introduced us, and I think we kind of hit it off right away, and your enthusiasm for what we're building has been amazing for us. So yeah.
Yeah, Dave and I go way back. I think he and I met as Peloton was starting to work on platooning probably over a decade ago. And he's an interesting guy. And yeah, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. I mean, we get introduced to a lot of innovators, entrepreneurs, people thinking about solutions, and some of which don't know the trucking industry too well. They might know cars, or they might know different parts of vehicles, but it's always fun. And we engage where we can. I mean, it's not the main part of what NACFI does, but it's fun to get to know people. And we probably use I'd like to say it's a more quantitative filter to think about, but it's pretty qualitative when we think about, okay, well, here's an idea. How will the industry look at it? I mean, how much value is it? How much change we have to make in the industry, et cetera? So I remember thinking through that with you, and it was just a pleasure getting to know you and how you were coming at this challenge in trucking, not with a know-it-all attitude, but with one of interest. So So tell us about Range Energy, the company. And the first product that you're working on, or maybe it's the first product, then the company. I don't know if it's chicken or the egg, but tell us about what you're up to.
Yeah. So, fortunately or unfortunately, I fall square into that kind of realm of knowing a lot about cars and electric vehicles and product, but knowing just a little bit about this specific industry. I've been actually towing ever since I was 14 years old, but everything I've ever towed was behind a pickup truck. And so I have some deep towing empathy, but not really much experience in the Class 8 world. And so as I started to think about what our technology could bring, and we'll talk about the technology in just a second, we were kind of thinking through all the different areas of the trailer world and where our most benefit could land in day one, and so the Class 8 industry was an obvious huge piece for us, and we've been spending the last year learning as much as we can and leading with humility and being empathetic to the folks that are operating every single day and bringing home food for their families. So basically what we're building here is a new electrified powered trailer platform, and the elements are relatively simple. We take one of the axles that's in the bogie of a 53-foot dry van or a reefer. It can also be a pup trailer or anything in between. But essentially, we take a dry van form factor. We replace one of the axles in the bogie with an e-axle. We add a battery pack underneath the box. And then most importantly, we add a smart kingpin. So we take the kingpin that's been there forever, and we add a little bit of sensing and intelligence to it. And the result is that now the trailer can sense how hard the tractor is pulling or how hard the driver is commanding that tractor to pull. And because we're measuring the force, we can actually have the trailer very gently drive itself to make itself feel weightless to the tractor. So the benefit of this is now that we actually can work on an old Peterbilt, we can work on a brand new e-Cascadia, and on an old Peterbilt or even a brand new Freightliner Cascadia, we can get you up to 40% better fuel economy because now the trailer is doing its own work. And on an electric tractor, if you have a fleet of new e-Cascadias, we can expand the utility of those tractors. So instead of, let's say, 120 to 180 miles, which is what our customers are seeing average range on an e-Cascadia, we bump that up above 250 miles, again, because the trailer is doing all of its own work intelligently.
Really interesting, and I think, well, let me ask you a question. Why heavy duty so quickly, rather than maybe, horse trailers on,
Yeah.
pickup trucks or I don't know, campers or other things? What, do you remember how you made that decision?
Yeah, so early days, we actually were looking at specifically campers and horse trailers and boat trailers because there's a big market there and we can develop a product pretty quickly. But one of the things that we did early on was we kind of created this Venn diagram of these three elements. Number one would be something that we can actually build. So something that there's a supply chain that exists for it. We're not forcing new physics or new chemistry to be invented. The second element is something that the customers will want. So there has to be a market for it. There has to be a continued and growing market for it and massive demand. And then the third piece is what are the applications that are going to have the biggest net impact to either the environment or to the efficiency of an operation, where they're kind of those two things are for us seen as hand in hand. And so right smack in the middle of this Venn diagram is Class 8 trucking. And includes reefers. So one of the things I didn't talk about is that our system actually works to power reefers as well. And so if we look at that, that's where the biggest opportunity fell. And so, I like to go for the most ambitious goals that I believe are achievable. And I feel that this industry is ready for a practical decarbonization solution. And this is a solution that we can get on the roads immediately because we don't have to worry about crash testing or any of these other kind of homologation requirements when you have a passenger truck or a passenger vehicle.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting around. I guess would be utility, meaning you have the technology to sense and not have to connect to the tractor for information or for anything.
That's right.
And that's really key. That's really key. We talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and so forth, particularly when they're working on trailer ideas where they're kind of like, well, the trailer and the tractor can do this and can do that and can do the other, where very few tractors and trailers stay connected or stay matched in North America. And the freight system in North America, and we've studied it a little bit. I maybe I should go. I'm not quite the history person, but maybe I should go back and look at it. But the fact that we can keep the tractors rolling, keep the drivers moving, a lot of them get paid by the mile. So drop and hook is just so ingrained in our freight movement in North America that literally, to your point earlier, and I don't want us and listeners and any of us to miss what Ali said, and that is that the technology is being created to work with an old Peterbilt or a new e-Cascadia or a new electric EV tractor from Peterbilt and an old Freightliner.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, I think one of the things that I kind of underemphasized here that I think is core to exactly why we're able to make these kind of these decisions is that we are highly focused on empathy for the customer. And we have a rule here that unless it's something that's going to make the load more efficient or the driver happier, we're not going to build it. And so we, a little bit different than maybe everybody else approaching this industry is that we believe the driver is perhaps the most important element here. And everything that we're delivering as far as a drive system, the user interface, how the trailer delivers torque, all of that stuff is primarily focused on the driver. And so after your conversation, the first conversation we had back in November, December timeframe, one of the pieces of advice that you gave to us was learn as much as you can about this industry before you approach the industry. And it was very, very poignant. And that was advice that we heard not only from you, but from some other friends and advisors, how critical every single element of these operations are today and how much pain it takes to switch these elements. And
oftentimes that's called quality function deployment, or there are other like market pieces. But I think what you're talking about and is really like almost like phase two. There's like the engineering, understanding how a product is used, what challenges are there, and how to make it better. But then there's like the marketplace nuances, I would call it. Yeah. Is that what you're talking about? And what have you found as you've gone out searching for that?
It's a little bit of both. And so it's trying to make sure that if we present a piece of technology, both the mechanics and the folks up in the office making the decisions are happy about what we're building. And one specific example is that so we just completed our first pilot with a massive beverage distributor in Southern California. And one of the first things we did early on in that engagement was we spent 3 days in their yard working with different folks across the value chain there. So we spent time doing drive-alongs and ride-alongs. We spent time with the mechanics, understanding what tools they have in their toolbox. So a perfect example is that the task was go understand what tools the mechanics already have. And then when we come back to develop our system, we develop it leveraging the tools that are already in their toolbox. So we're not forcing them to now go buy a whole new set of tools or some special tool to make this all work. The mechanic can just open the toolbox and use the same tools and procedures they've always used.
Interesting. Hey, so let's just stop here a minute in the time we got together and kind of go backwards. I mean, tell us about your career. And because right now there's a lot of excitement around transformative technologies in trucking, and there's a lot of people bringing solutions to this space: regulation, sustainability, safety, all kinds of drivers for that. But what got you here, and what about your background do you think was part and parcel of you being here in trucking here in 2023?
Yeah, I believe it or not, I spent the first part of my career in racing in North America. So I ran a few touring car race teams for groups like BMW and Mitsubishi. And so I got to spend a lot of time in the racing industry straight out of college. And I'm a mechanical engineer by training. But that racing experience really taught me a few things that no matter how much engineering you do, it doesn't matter if it doesn't get on the road and actually produce good lap times. And then it also taught me that deadlines don't move and deadlines don't change, and you're not the only one in the world. And so one trap that a Silicon Valley startup can fall under is that they just get so tunnel focused, there's such a high amount of tunnel vision in their specific domain in their product that they forget that the world is continuing to progress and move. And so anyways, I spent the beginning portion of my career in racing. In 2008, I joined a small startup building an electric car called Tesla Motors. I ended up building out and running the prototype vehicles team for Tesla from 2008 through 2012. Most notably, the Model S came out of that lab. After Tesla, I went over to Google and I worked on some manufacturing hardware. And then over to Zoox in the robotaxi world and helping develop the robotaxi platform there. But like I said, ever since I was a kid, trailers have always been something important to me. And I have a lot of friends that are small fleet operators and this industry is something that I understand the value of in society. And so the first opportunity I had to kind of take what I've learned from my career and help make the job of the driver and the systems more efficient, that was a pretty immediate draw for me.
Yeah, we one of the things you said I find interesting, and that is the old saying, we don't get any respect. The trucking industry is sometimes complained about not getting the respect it needs. Of course, I don't think the industry, I think the industry is pretty modest, and we'd rather just not get any notoriety for just going and doing the job, right? Getting the milk, the medicines, getting things to the stores, clothes, and so forth. The pandemic kind of, caused us to think a little odd about supply chain and how critical trucking is. And I think times are really changing on how we view freight and goods movement, not only from a sustainability, but also from like a resiliency or just basic, an uptime. So you've been at this for a little while. You've got an announcement though that you made not too long ago around the product. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we have a couple of pretty cool announcements. So a couple of weeks ago, we got approved for the California Core program. Our customers now qualify for an $80,000 point of sale rebate for our trailers in the state of California. And the Core program is pretty robust, and there's a bunch of other cool kind of tentacles to this program. But the big piece here is that this is the first time that a powered trailer product has ever been included in a program like this. And the signal that this sends to all of the other regulators across the state and across the country is massive for us. The second big really cool announcement is that we completed our first customer pilot, and the results, the test results were promising, and they matched all of our kind of original hypothesis, and the customers begging for more time with our trailer in their yard, which is a great signal.
Excellent. So I like the term powered trailer. Matter of fact, I used it probably 10 years ago when I was thinking, and we saw the first opportunities with automation. I used it in a different context than you are. I said, what if we could get rid of the entire cab, most of the tractor, if there was some sort of self-driving thing, and then why make that a separate part from the trailer? Why don't we just power the trailer and let it drive autonomously, a box around? I think the movie Logan might be a little scary with respect to that. But,
yeah, Hyundai's playing with something like that, but I really believe that that's like 20 or 30 years out, and we really need something that's going to make a difference today.
Right. So let's talk about the challenges, or what did you know going in, maybe that were challenges, and then maybe what you're sort of learning as you're starting to really put it out. I mean, I think about weight, I think about cost, I think about just the technology around doing this without data from the tractor, on and on. But what are the challenges with this technology?
So one piece is that, and you touched on it, and I didn't really go into detail, but to be very, very clear, like you said, we do not require a data transmission or a data feed from the tractor into the trailer. We're just using physics, and that actually ends up enabling a bunch of other functionalities. Most importantly to us is functional safety. So I think there's a bunch of elements around that are kind of critical to the way that we operate now. The challenges and the next steps, I think for us, it's establishing the supply chain, and really, like you said earlier, it's learning all of those little nuances, because one fleet may have an average of 3-to-1 trailers to tractors, but other fleet has an average of 10-to-1. And how do we present value to these fleets that have more trailers, a larger trailer ratio? And then also, how do we present value to the over-the-road solution? Because, I'll be very honest that our trailer has massive benefits on daily routes, on, runs that are in this kind of like sub 300-mile range. We can make incredible amounts of difference. But how do we develop this technology, a Gen 2 version of this that'll work on the 800 or 1,000-mile daily over-the-road applications as well? So I think those are some of the challenges that we have ahead, and I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to knock them out.
Yeah, there are some segments that have 1.5 trailers or less per tractor. I mean, the refrigerated industry, because of the extra expense of those trailers, they tend to just have less of them. It's basically a capital issue, and they work harder to manage those pieces. Tell us a little bit more about how the trailer interacts with the tractor, and what are some of the, I think oftentimes they're called edge cases, but what are some of the really challenging? Is it weather related? Is it tell us what you can about the
Yeah.
specific challenges of that.
So I'll give you an example of one of the test runs that we just completed recently. We did the Grapevine run, which is on Southern California I-5. It's a 6% grade in both directions. I think it's somewhere around 6 or 7 miles long. And we were at 60% throttle, 55 miles an hour up the hill. We didn't touch the brakes on the backside of the hill. And we were able to reclaim over 10 kilowatt hours of energy in regen on the back of the hill. And the best piece of all of this is that we got 11 miles per gallon going over that hill with a loaded trailer. All of this is done with the driver feedback being received on a regular basis. And you know, my biggest, everybody was like, oh, we got 11 miles per gallon and everything is cool and everything worked over the hill multiple times and all of this. My biggest kind of flag that I wave all the time is that the driver felt an unbelievable sense of confidence going down the hill. And how many times, even on a small trailer, do you feel confident going down a big grade? You're just scared the whole time.
I laugh because, you know, my wife and I are pretty much full-time RVers. So, you know, we came down a mountain pass just 2 days ago, Ollie. So I get all that.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the things that this strikes me is our collective industry understanding of regenerative braking, whether it's on the tractor or in your case, learning it on the trailer. One of the run-on less depots, I mean, I'll name them OK Produce. They are, you know, a traditional return to base regional haul, mostly in medium length regional haul. So they go out with fruits and vegetables to stores outside of Fresno, and some of that can be longer runs, but they were really surprised at how efficient the electric truck was in state highway, start and stop, going through towns and so forth. I mean, just the traditional thinking, and we've seen it in regional haul where fuel economy tanks when you've got to slow down and stop at traffic lights and then get back up to speed.
Yeah.
And, you know, you still have to move the freight and you got to stop the freight and move it. But when you're regenerative and with these, you know, EVs, axles, whether they're on tractors or trailers, you know, there's a lot of energy there to recoup, and the technologies, it's kind of surprising a lot of us, really.
Yeah, I think you know, the thing that we always focus on is, and you and I are probably the same in this, is that we always kind of think about why is this not going to work, or why could this not work? Not being negative about it, but just trying to understand what do we have to protect for in our operation. But I think as kind of a group here, we tend to highlight the net benefits or a little bit less than maybe we should. So for example, you know, an electric tractor or a diesel tractor with our electric trailer, that whole thing of like facing a hill and being worried that what's going to happen in between gears when I have a fully loaded trailer, like, you know, or going through an intersection up a hill and you're, you know, stuck in traffic, like that all disappears when you have electric propulsion. Because whether it's the trailer filling the torque in between gears and making a seamless acceleration movement, or an electric tractor that doesn't have a transmission that's giving you a seamless kind of universal deliver, or a clean torque power delivery, these are huge benefits, and the drivers are getting out of the tractors happier every day because of them.
Yeah, you know, you reminded me of, you know, we're both engineers, and in school they teach you about failure modes and effects analysis, where you you predict or you guess or you think about all the ways it could fail, and then you try to create the design to get fixed. Well, I always struggle. It's absolutely necessary when you're working on products like we're working on.
Absolutely.
But you know, I went back and researched, and some of the early creators of those tools also had a second part of it, where they were not only looking at the failure mode and effects, but they were looking at the opportunities,
absolutely,
modes and effects. It says, okay, I'm working on this new product, and oh my goodness, it offers this benefit that maybe I didn't understand. And then how can we make sure that benefit is maximized in the design? Not only protecting ourselves from risks, and maybe I'm preaching a little here, Ollie, but not only are we looking to prevent the risks and failures with our design, but how do we maximize their benefits? And it also takes action to do that.
Yeah, and you know, in order to maximize the benefits, you actually have to develop something that you may not be thinking to develop in the first place. Like there are going to be other operators operating your tool. So you need to make sure that human in the loop has these maybe some creature comforts that they may need that you don't, that don't make any sense in your engineering stack up, right? And that's one of the things that we're focused on, is making sure, don't forget about every single element in the stack, including especially the driver.
Yep. Well, we're starting to run out of time, Ali. I think one of the things that I think about when I talk to you is that you don't need to have a product that solves problems for all the marketplace or much of the marketplace. And that, trucking is pretty diverse. There's logging trucks and there's tractors and there's refrigerated, and there's just so many different things that, I got to believe you're out there trying to find where the technology really fits the best with the entire trucking industry. So it's been fun having you on. But before we go, what are a few things, maybe some advice you would give either other folks in your kind of situation, but who are thinking about trucking, or maybe just like, what do you want people inside of trucking to do with technologies and ideas like yours?
I think that there is a pretty there's a bit of a lack of focus in folks like myself developing technology to fit existing operations, rather than developing new procedures and new tools that force fleets to change how they work. And I think a lot of the success that we've had with customers and with large trailer OEMs that are talking to these customers is because we've led with humility. We ask questions first, and then we always make sure to kind of circle back on our kind of foundational tenet here in the company, which is that our innovation is driven by empathy. And really developing technology for the sake of technology is I think a dead end. And making sure that you have that end goal, and that person or that entity is truly happy at the end of this, is super important.
Good advice. Thanks a lot, Ali, for joining us. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Freight Efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends.